To plant mushrooms in your garden you will need the species you want to grow, fresh baker's yeast and sugar. When you are going mushroom picking, also take these overripe pieces with you. Mushrooms needed for sowing should be fully developed and ripe. A hat is needed along with the root, they can be with worms. In the mushroom caps there are fungal spores from which fungi spread in nature, and in the root there is the mycelium needed for the fungus to grow. People usually throw mushrooms under garden trees, but this method is insufficient for fungal growth. Even the hats of wormy mushrooms will be good, as well as the remnants of their peeling and root cleaning left over from successful mushroom picking. Place all parts in a bucket. The next step is to activate the yeast, which will awaken the spores of the fungus. Dissolve the yeast cube in a glass of warm but not hot water. It should be around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. Add 3 tablespoons of sugar and 3 tablespoons of flour, mix, and set aside for an hour. Yeast is a type of microscopic fungus that has the extraordinary ability to multiply rapidly. Yeast is ubiquitous in nature. They live on the soil or rotting fallen fruit, e.g. as a whitish coating on the skin of decaying plums. However, wild yeast functions as it wants, in an unpredictable way. There are relatively few of them and they are not able to consume and process complex sugars. 1 gram of baker's yeast cube contains 25 billion yeast cells. They must eat to live. The food for yeast is different types of sugars. It can be fruit sugar but also plain white sugar. Depending on the type of yeast, they perform different functions. Yeast supports many organisms in nature, protecting them against diseases or facilitating functioning in health, as well as reproduction and further proper development. Research conducted by scientists from the Iraq Journal of Agricultural Sciences in 2013, showed an increase in the yield of oyster mushroom after adding yeast by 50%. The results showed that the yield and biological efficiency increased with increasing concentration of yeast extract. After an hour of waiting for the yeast to activate, add it to the mushrooms and add rainwater. It must not contain chlorine. There are billions or even trillions of spores in a single mushroom. Therefore, it doesn't take much to inoculate the mycelium. The minimum dose is 1 liter of water for 1 large mushroom and a teaspoon of sugar and 5 tablespoons of yeast. You can even dilute such a solution in a barrel of water. Then, the whole thing should be finely ground, e.g. by crushing or grinding the contents in a food processor. We cover such a mixture with, for example, a cloth and leave it outside for 3 weeks in the shade. The next step is to find a suitable place in the garden. It must have favorable conditions for the development of fungi, i.e. it must be warm and humid. So it should be a wet place slightly warmed by the sun, but not so much that the soil periodically completely dries out. Look for places covered with moss or other mushroom on the lawn. Another important element of the success of mushroom cultivation is a tree suitable for a given species of fungus, from which the roots of the fungus develop a mycorrhiza and enter into symbiosis. Without it, the fungus will not grow. Each mushroom species has different tree requirements. It is best if these trees are relatively young, from 5 to 10 years old. That is why so many mushrooms grow, for example, in forest nurseries. We sow pine boletes near conifers, like pine trees. The porcino likes pine, spruce, beech and oak. Chanterelle grows under pine, spruce, oak, beech and hornbeam trees. Bay bolete under pine and spruce. Birch boletes under the birch, slippery jack under pine, larch, and spruce. The red pine mushroom likes pine and spruce, which are typically coniferous. Morels like pine and spruce bark with an admixture of sawdust, ash from burnt wood and gypsum. By contrast, truffles like poplars, oaks, hazel, willows and beeches, and require an alkaline, calcareous soil above 7.5 pH. If you don't have trees in your garden or your garden is too small, inoculate the mycelium in the forest in a place that only you will know. Dig holes 15 cm deep and about 40 cm in diameter around the tree at a distance of 50 cm to 5 meters. The larger the diameter of the tree trunk, the further we can dig holes. The optimal distance is counting 10 tree trunk diameters. The roots of the tree reach twice the crown of the tree itself. Add to the holes an embankment of garden soil with preferably deacidified peat, or soil from the forest, if you have one. Then pour about 2 liters of the mushroom mixture into each of them. Cover it with soil and a substrate that will retain moisture, e.g. bark. It can be one from a bag. It also often contains fungal spores, e.g. morels, can also be forest litter with needles, leaves or twigs. In natural conditions, mushrooms often grow next to fallen decaying trees. It is also worth placing such small logs in the garden, drill them and water them with specificity, cover them with soil and water them. Subsequently, each place where the mycelium was inoculated should be watered with a bucket of rainwater. The best time for such sowing is like in nature. So if we currently have an outbreak of boletus or boletes in the forest in September, we are doing it this month. Then there are optimal conditions that will guarantee the survival and development of the mycelium. If mushrooms are spreading their spores from under their hats in a given month, this would be the best time. If the rainfall is small, additionally the newly inoculated place should be regularly watered with water. In good conditions, mushrooms will appear after just 2 years. The mycelium will bear fruit for about 4 years or longer, so it is worth supplementing the substrate with new mycelium. Remember that the appearance of fungi also depends on the weather conditions. It happens that one year we have a lot of mushrooms in the forests and there are also years when they are missing. If you haven't found any mushrooms of the species you want to grow in the forest, you can buy mushroom mycelium from the online store.